Chris Truitt. I'm a videographer in Central Texas, and I recently purchased the Panasonic S1H. Now, I already made a first impressions video on the camera. You can find the link for that down in the description or up in the card. That way you can go and watch sort of my overall impressions of the camera. But for this video, I want to make a top 5 best things about the Panasonic S1H. Now, these aren't in any particular order. They're just sort of my top 5 things that I personally like about the camera. Now, as an S1H owner, you might feel completely different, and that's fine. But again, these are just my opinions on this camera. So number 1 is the future-proof capabilities of this camera. Now, overall, I would say everything that I mentioned in this video is a reason why this camera is future-proof capable. But the thing that comes to my mind is the 6K. Now, we'll talk about 6K later in the video, but I'm just gonna talk about how having 6K is such a great feature. Because where we are in the market right now is 4K is really becoming the norm. If you're shooting 1080p, it's fine. I'm sure shooting for web 1080p is fine, but shooting 4K, that is the future. That's where things are going. That's where movies are going, TV is going. And so as videographers, filmmakers, we're gonna have to keep up with that. So having 6K is honestly gonna give you the best 4K. What I mean by that is that you can take your 6K image and downscale it to 4K and retain all that detail of the 6K image in your 4K final product. So as a video creator, having something that is brand new on the cutting edge of the camera industry, that's just gonna set you up for success for many, many years down the road. Number 2, this kind of bleeds in from the first reason, and it is the 6K and the 6K codec. Now, I've already been talking about 6K for a little bit here, but the big thing is the codecs. Now, some people might look at it and say, oh, it's 420, so it's not professional, blah, blah, whatever. It's 10-bit, 420, 200 megabits per second, 6K. Now, sure, there is 4K in the camera that is 400 megabits per second, but having 6K, being able to acquire 6K footage in a mirrorless body is amazing. It's a feat unlike any other camera, maybe except for the Pocket 6K, but those are totally different camera. But I don't think most people that are complaining about this are gonna be wanting to edit 6K footage, 422, 10-bit, 12-bit, whatever, 400 megabits per second. I don't think they want to be editing that. So having 6K in a manageable file format is just amazing, and being able to work with 6K footage, because honestly, working with the 6K footage is sometimes easier than working with the 4K footage. Number 3 is the 4K and the codecs for 4K. Now, I was just talking about how 6K is such a nice smaller file size, but now with the 4K, that's really where this camera opens up, and it has so many different options. Off the top of my head, you have anamorphic, which is insane, 4K slow motion, and you get 4K 422 10-bit 400 megabits per second. That's a lot of different codecs and file sizes, resolutions, frame rates for 4K. Now, this camera is a 6K camera, but it really shines with all the different flavors of 4K that you can shoot in this camera. Now, number 4 is the color science of the camera. Now, I came from Sony and using Sony colors, and I'm not gonna bash on Sony colors. I think they're great. They're not amazing. The good thing, in my opinion, is you can work with them and you can bend it, mold it to however you want your footage to look. But with the Panasonic colors, especially what they've put in the S1H, is amazing. So it comes with V-Log in the camera, but it also comes with the V-Gamut. Now, the V-Gamut, the Gamut curve, is what they use in their VariCam cinema cameras. And I haven't necessarily done a ton of research into VariCams, but the footage that I'm seeing out of this camera is amazing. The dynamic range is just so crazy to see your scopes range the entire square and just to be able to see your shadows and see your highlights. It just looks so beautiful. Like, the image, to me, honestly, just looks so cinematic right out of the camera. And I recently shot a travel film. You can check it out either in the cards or in the link below. You can go and you can sort of see my first attempt at editing this footage and how it all looks. I just think it's some of the best images that I've ever created, And I honestly think it's because of the color science that is built into this camera. My fifth reason is the body and the screen of the camera. Now let me show you something real quick. I'm sure you've seen this, but I just gotta show it off. So here is the flip screen. You can flip it out, look at yourself, whatever. But here's what's really cool, and I found myself using this way more often than I thought I would, is this little lever at the bottom. You pull it and flip it up, and boom. It's kind of hard to see there, but let's see if I can turn this. So the screen comes off the back of the body, and that's cool for a few reasons. Is if you have an HDMI plugged in here or any sort of cables plugged in here, this screen right here, if it's down and flips, boom, that's already hitting your HDMI. You just have to have some weird maneuvering around the cable to be able to flip your screen. But having this right there, boom, takes you away from the body so that you can flip your screen. Now what I found this useful for is kind of going back to my Sony days, and that I would flip the screen out, go like that, and then so I can tilt it. Because sometimes I feel like at this angle, the screen it can get a weird glare. So having the screen flipped in and out by the body, you can sort of use your hand or your body to get reflections and stuff out. But that's just a really cool feature for the screen. Now the body itself is it's built like a tank, honestly. It's got the fan so that it can blow in and out air because it has that 6K sensor. And just the beefiness of the body, I've talked about that in my first impressions video, but I had to include it in this because I really love the way that this body feels in your hand. It's perfect for the run and gun videography that I do. So that was sort of a quick video just talking about the top 5 things that I really like about this camera. There's plenty of other things that you can go on, and I would say that this camera definitely has more pros than cons. But speaking of cons, I'm gonna be releasing a top 5 worst things about the Panasonic S1H. And so that will be linked at the end of the video, so you can go and watch that and see sort of some of my qualms that I have with this camera. So that's gonna bring me to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.